Friends, if you want to watch the super hit movie Ballerina 2025 in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. In today's video, we are going to talk about a movie that has gained a lot of attention and is part of one of the most exciting action universes of recent years. The movie is called Ballerina 2025, and we will cover everything you need to know about it. This includes what the movie is, where you can watch it, interesting facts about how it was made, and all the details regarding the technical aspects, music, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, and box office. Along with that, I will share a short overview of the story and review the plot. We will also break down the performances of the star cast, highlight who played which role, and mention some of the standout moments from the movie. So stay with us till the end to get a complete guide to Ballerina 2025. Ballerina is not just any action film. It belongs to the John Wick universe, which has become one of the most popular action franchises of the decade. After the huge success of John Wick movies, fans were eagerly waiting for a spin-off that would expand the world and give us a new perspective. That is exactly what Ballerina does. It introduces a fresh storyline while still being connected to the universe we already know. The movie focuses on a female assassin who was briefly introduced in John Wick Chapter 3, and now she is given her own center stage to show her journey. This makes Ballerina both familiar and refreshing at the same time. In terms of pre-production, the movie had been in discussion for a long time. The idea of expanding the John Wick universe with spin-offs was always there, and Ballerina was one of the most promising projects. The producers took time to shape the story carefully, ensuring that it connects to the main series while also being strong enough to stand on its own. The script went through several drafts to balance the action sequences, emotional depth, and world building. Casting was another crucial stage. The filmmakers wanted someone who could deliver both physical performance and emotional strength. This led them to Ana de Armas, who is known for her roles in action films like No Time to Die and her versatility in other projects. When it comes to filming, Ballerina was shot across multiple locations to capture the international feel that the John Wick movies are famous for. The production team used practical sets, atmospheric lighting, and choreographed fight sequences to maintain the same intense style of action that fans expect. The stunts are a major highlight, with the lead actress performing several sequences herself, adding realism and energy to the scenes. Cinematography played an important role in creating the signature look of the film, mixing dark tones with flashes of vibrant colors during action sequences. The music department also deserves special mention. The soundtrack of Ballerina complements the visuals and enhances the tension during the fight scenes. Just like in the main John Wick films, the score shifts between suspenseful beats and high-energy tracks to match the pacing of the action. This careful attention to music elevates the viewing experience and makes the action more immersive. After filming, the post-production stage brought everything together. Editing was crucial in maintaining the fast-paced flow of the story, while still giving enough space for character development. Special effects were used to polish the action scenes, though the filmmakers relied more on practical stunts to keep the raw, grounded feeling of the fights. Color grading was another key step, giving the movie a distinct tone that sets it apart while still connecting it visually to the John Wick universe. Talking about the budget, Ballerina was made with a significant investment, but it was designed to be more contained compared to the main John Wick films. Despite this, the movie still offers grand action sequences and high production value. The box office expectations are high, especially since the fanbase for the John Wick franchise is strong worldwide. Early predictions suggest that Ballerina will perform well, attracting both fans of the series and new viewers interested in a female-led action thriller. The story of Ballerina focuses on a young assassin seeking revenge for the murder of her family. As she goes deeper into her mission, she uncovers dangerous secrets and faces some of the most skilled killers in the world. The narrative blends emotional stakes with non-stop action, creating a balance that keeps the audience engaged. Without giving away too many spoilers, the movie delivers on both personal drama and large-scale action sequences. The performances are one of the strongest points of the movie. Ana de Armas shines in the lead role, bringing both intensity and vulnerability to her character. Supporting actors also add depth, with familiar faces from the John Wick universe making appearances to tie the stories together. Keanu Reeves himself appears in a special role, which has been one of the most talked about aspects of the movie. Other cast members bring strong performances that make the world feel alive and interconnected. Overall, Ballerina 2025 delivers what it promises: a stylish, action-packed film that expands the John Wick universe while introducing a strong new protagonist. It combines breathtaking stunts, emotional storytelling, and striking visuals to create an experience that action fans will love. If you are a follower of the John Wick series or simply enjoy well-crafted action movies, this film is worth your time. So, watch the movie and enjoy a thrilling ride filled with drama, suspense, and unforgettable moments. Ballerina 2025 tells the story of Eve Maccaro, played by Ana de Armas, a young woman whose life is shattered when a raid led by the ruthless Chancellor, portrayed by Gabriel Byrne, destroys her home and kills her father, Javier. Winston Scott, played by Ian McShane, steps in to protect her and places her in the care of the Rusca Roma, a powerful underground society of ballerina assassins led by the director, portrayed by Angelica Houston. Under the strict guidance of the director, Eve undergoes 12 years of intense training. She learns ballet, hand-to-hand combat, weapons mastery, and the art of survival, transforming from a broken orphan into a precise and deadly assassin. During her early years with the Rusca Roma, Eve crosses paths with John Wick, played by Keanu Reeves. Their brief interaction becomes a meaningful moment in her life. John warns her about the darkness of the path she is taking, yet he also understands the pain and violence that has shaped her. This short but powerful encounter ties the film firmly into the larger John Wick timeline and adds weight to Eve's journey. After proving herself by eliminating a former Rusca Roma member who betrayed the organization, Eve earns her place among the Kikimora, an elite group of assassins. While serving as a bodyguard on different missions, she demonstrates both skill and loyalty. However, her true motivation lies in her quest for vengeance against those who destroyed her family. As her journey unfolds, she discovers secrets that go far deeper than she ever expected. Norman Reedus plays Daniel Pine, an assassin with his own troubled past, who is later revealed to be the Chancellor's estranged son. His complicated relationship with Eve shifts between ally and rival, adding tension and unpredictability to the story. Catalina Sandino Moreno appears as Lena, another highly skilled assassin who is eventually revealed to be Eve's long-lost sister. This revelation adds a powerful emotional layer to the conflict, as Eve realizes that her bloodline is far more entangled with the cult's history than she imagined. David Castañeda portrays Javier Maccaro, Eve's father, in flashbacks and memories that fuel her determination for revenge. Eve's journey takes her across Europe, and one of her missions leads her to Prague where she becomes the protector of a young girl named Ella, played by Ava McCarthy. This child, caught in the web of the cult's influence, becomes the symbol of innocence that Eve is desperate to protect. Ella's presence forces Eve to rethink her choices and recognize the cycle of violence that the cult has perpetuated for generations. The story also takes us back inside the Continental hotels where familiar faces like Sharon, played by the late Lance Reddick, uphold the rules of the assassin underworld. Winston once again plays an important role, guiding Eve while also reminding her of the dangers of crossing lines within their secret society. These appearances from established characters connect Ballerina directly to the John Wick universe while still giving Eve her own independent story. Eventually, Eve tracks down the cult's stronghold in Hallstatt, a remote mountain base where the Chancellor reveals long-hidden truths. It is here that she learns more about Lena, her family's past, and the brutal methods by which the cult sustains itself. Captured and forced into a confrontation, Eve must choose between vengeance, survival, and the hope of breaking free from the cycle of violence. The Chancellor tries to justify his actions by claiming the cult provided structure and purpose to broken lives, but Eve rejects this twisted philosophy. The climactic battle pushes Eve to her limits. She faces Lena in a brutal fight that blends sisterhood, betrayal, and survival. The Chancellor attempts to manipulate them both, but Eve's determination to protect Ella and end the cult's reign drives her to take decisive action. John Wick reappears at a crucial moment, offering support but also reminding Eve of the cost of her decisions. His presence underscores the moral weight of killing for revenge versus killing for protection. In the final act, Eve defeats the Chancellor and ensures Ella's safety, but her choice to kill him sets new consequences in motion. She returns to the Continental in New York where Winston warns her that her actions have placed a target on her back. A new bounty is issued, and while she has won a personal battle, she now faces the endless dangers of the assassin world. Ballerina closes with Eve stepping into an uncertain future, stronger and more determined but also aware that her choices have reshaped her destiny. The performances throughout the film bring depth to the story, with Ana de Armas carrying the weight of the lead role, Gabriel Byrne embodying a menacing villain, Norman Reedus adding layers of tension, and Catalina Sandino Moreno delivering emotional conflict as Eve's sister. Small but meaningful appearances from Keanu Reeves, Ian McShane, Lance Reddick, and Angelica Houston ground the story in the John Wick universe while allowing Eve to emerge as a character strong enough to carry her own franchise. Ballerina 2025 opens with a haunting image of a young Eve Macaro dancing alone in a dimly lit hall, her movements delicate but overshadowed by the sound of chaos outside. This first image sets the tone for the film, grace and violence coexisting in the same frame. Almost immediately, the inciting incident erupts when a violent raid led by the Chancellor and his men invades Eve's home, killing her father and forcing her into a world of fear and survival. This sequence is not only a personal tragedy but also the spark that launches the rest of the narrative. By showing us her vulnerability before the brutality, the film ensures we feel her loss deeply. From here, the setup begins. Winston Scott appears as the one figure willing to shield Eve. He places her in the care of the Ruska Roma, a hidden society of ballerina assassins under the rule of the director. The choice to show this transition in fragments, with quick flashes of training and harsh punishments, mirrors Eve's disorientation and growth. We do not see every step of her 12 years of training, but the editing provides enough glimpses to understand how pain is transformed into precision. This choice keeps the narrative moving at a fast pace while still giving weight to her evolution. The rising action takes form as Eve begins her work as a trained assassin. One of the earliest missions has her tasked with eliminating a traitor to the Ruska Roma, a sequence that doubles as both a test of loyalty and a demonstration of her skill. This moment is a clear turning point, showing the audience that Eve is no longer a helpless child but a weapon shaped by her mentors. The emotional complexity is heightened by her first encounter with John Wick during this period. Their meeting is short but charged, with Wick offering her a warning that resonates throughout the film. His presence reminds us that her story is part of a larger universe, but also gives Eve a mirror through which to reflect on her own future. The narrative then shifts into its mid-film momentum, introducing characters like Daniel Pine, played by Norman Reedus, and Lena, played by Catalina Sandino Moreno. Their entrances deepen the plot by adding layers of identity and betrayal. Daniel's role as the Chancellor's estranged son complicates Eve's mission, because he is both an ally and a potential enemy. Lena's reveal as Eve's long-lost sister comes during a carefully crafted sequence that destabilizes the audience's expectations. The filmmakers place this revelation at the midpoint, turning the story from a simple revenge mission into a personal conflict where loyalty and family bonds are tested. This is one of the emotional peaks of the film because it forces Eve to confront the possibility that her path is tied to more than just vengeance. As the story moves toward its second half, the pacing tightens. Eve's decision to protect a young girl named Ella in Prague shifts her motivation once again. What began as a personal vendetta expands into a larger struggle against the cycle of indoctrination that the cult represents. The choice to bring Ella into the story is not only about raising the stakes but also about giving Eve a symbol of innocence worth fighting for. The narrative uses this new character to force Eve into situations where she must decide whether to act as an assassin or as a protector. These moments provide some of the strongest emotional beats in the film, especially in scenes where Eve must shield Ella while fighting off waves of attackers. The build-up to the finale intensifies as Eve follows the trail of betrayal to the cult's mountain base in Hallstatt. The story reveals its secrets in this section with deliberate pacing. The Chancellor's speeches attempt to reframe the cult not as villains but as a twisted family offering purpose to the broken. The narrative choice here is important because it complicates the morality of the conflict. By presenting the cult's philosophy before the climax, the film makes Eve's rejection of it more powerful. The confrontation with Lena inside this base is another major turning point. Their duel combines both brutal choreography and emotional weight, as every strike feels like an argument about identity, loyalty, and love. The finale delivers on spectacle and resolution. Eve kills the Chancellor in an explosive battle that is both satisfying and tragic. By this point, the narrative has been carefully structured to show us how vengeance and protection intertwine, so his death feels inevitable but costly. John Wick's brief reappearance at this stage adds gravity to the moment, reminding Eve and the audience that choices in this universe always carry consequences. The editing lingers not on celebration but on the cost of survival, highlighting Ella's fear and Eve's exhaustion. The closing beat returns to the Continental in New York, where Winston warns Eve about the new bounty placed on her. This final note is deliberately ambiguous. It gives the audience closure for her immediate mission but leaves the door open for future stories. By choosing not to tie up every thread, the film mirrors the structure of John Wick films, where survival always comes at the expense of peace. What makes the narrative of Ballerina engaging is how it balances linear storytelling with carefully placed revelations. The flashbacks to Eve's father Javier are used sparingly, allowing his presence to remain a motivating force without breaking the forward momentum. The film's structure emphasizes growth, loss, and choice, using turning points like the sister reveal, the protection of Ella, and the final battle to keep the audience emotionally invested. Each narrative decision, from how much of Eve's training to show to when to reveal family ties, is designed to deepen our connection to her journey. In the end, Ballerina 2025 is more than a revenge tale. It is a story about cycles of violence, the search for identity, and the struggle between becoming what the world makes you or breaking free to protect what matters. Its plot and narrative choices give audiences not just thrilling action, but an emotional journey that lingers after the final frame. Ballerina 2025 is built not only on its action sequences, but also on the characters who give the story its emotional weight. The film explores how trauma, vengeance, loyalty, and choice shape people in a violent world. At the center is Eve Macaro, played by Ana de Armas, whose transformation from a grieving orphan into a feared assassin forms the backbone of the story. Her character arc is not only about physical strength but about deciding what kind of person she wants to become after years of being shaped by others. When we first meet Eve, she is a young girl who loses her father during a violent raid. She begins the movie as vulnerable, frightened, and stripped of the world she knew. What she wants at this stage is simple: survival and belonging. However, the very system that takes her in also becomes the force that reshapes her life in ways she cannot fully control. The Ruska Roma, under the leadership of the director played by Angelica Houston, trains her into a weapon, demanding obedience and precision. This environment instills strength but strips away innocence, and it sets up the central tension in her arc. The gestures that mark Eve's growth are often physical. In early scenes, her movements are hesitant, her eyes searching for guidance. By the middle of the film, her posture and gaze harden. A small but powerful beat occurs when she spares a target she was meant to kill, showing that despite her training she retains her own sense of morality. That decision foreshadows the later choice to protect Ella, the child who becomes a mirror of her younger self. The antagonist of the film, the Chancellor played by Gabriel Byrne, represents not only the murderer of her father but the embodiment of the cult's philosophy. He stands for control, legacy, and the cycle of violence disguised as protection. His development is less about change and more about revelation. At first he appears as a distant threat, a figure who orders raids and manipulates from the shadows. As the story unfolds, we see his personal philosophy through speeches and confrontations. A key moment is his justification of the cult's methods as a way of giving broken souls purpose. This line does not change him, but it clarifies his belief system, and it forces Eve to confront whether she accepts or rejects the same destiny. The Chancellor is less a dynamic character and more a wall against which Eve measures her own growth. Secondary characters provide contrast and force Eve to question herself. Daniel Pine, played by Norman Reedus, is caught between allegiance and betrayal. As the estranged son of the Chancellor, he represents what happens when family ties clash with personal choice. His interactions with Eve are layered with mistrust, but subtle gestures, such as when he lowers his weapon during a standoff, signal a quiet shift from enemy to reluctant ally. His arc is incomplete by design, leaving room for ambiguity about where his loyalty ultimately lies. Lena, portrayed by Catalina Sandino Moreno, undergoes a different type of development. Introduced as a skilled assassin and opponent, she is later revealed to be Eve's long-lost sister. Her presence complicates Eve's goals, because Lena embodies the life Eve might have had if she had been fully absorbed into the cult without question. The fight between the sisters is both physical and symbolic. Lena's words during the battle reveal bitterness about being abandoned, while Eve's hesitation to strike a fatal blow shows her resistance to becoming purely a tool of violence. Their relationship arc does not resolve neatly, but it highlights the theme of identity being shaped by circumstance. Other characters serve as anchors in Eve's journey. Winston Scott, played by Ian McShane, begins as her protector and later becomes a pragmatic guide. His development is subtle, as his role is less about personal change and more about maintaining continuity within the world. Yet his offhand remarks to Eve, reminding her of the cost of breaking rules, reveal both his care for her and his loyalty to the structure of the assassin order. Sharon, portrayed by the late Lance Reddick, reinforces this stability with small gestures of kindness, offering Eve the respect of a seasoned professional rather than treating her as a pawn. These supporting characters may not undergo radical change, but their presence adds texture and meaning to Eve's choices. John Wick's brief but powerful appearance is also central to Eve's development. He enters not as a mentor but as a living warning of what a life defined by vengeance becomes. His quiet words and weary expression show the toll of endless killing. For Eve, seeing Wick is like looking into a possible future. She does not respond immediately, but later moments, like her decision to protect Ella, show that his influence has quietly taken root. By the end of the film, Eve has changed in significant ways. When she kills the Chancellor, she appears to complete her revenge, but the act does not bring peace. Instead, it leaves her aware of the consequences and the new bounty on her head. Her arc is one of partial transformation. She begins by seeking vengeance for her father but ends by realizing the true cost of violence and the responsibility she carries for others, especially Ella. The final gesture of taking Ella's hand and walking away from the carnage signals not closure but a new beginning, one defined by choice rather than command. Ballerina's character development works because it balances spectacle with subtle beats. A look of hesitation, a lowered weapon, a hand reaching for another. These are the moments that show growth more than speeches or large actions. Eve is not fully redeemed, nor is she consumed by violence. Instead, she becomes a figure shaped by loss but capable of forging her own path, leaving audiences with a complex, evolving protagonist rather than a one-note assassin. When a film like Ballerina relies on both high-stakes action and raw emotional undercurrents, performances can make or break the story. What keeps the audience invested is not just the choreography of violence but the conviction with which the actors inhabit their roles. The cast of Ballerina brings varying shades of energy to the screen, with some disappearing seamlessly into their characters and others occasionally struggling to keep pace with the film's intense atmosphere. Ana de Armas, stepping into the lead as Rooney, demonstrates why she has quickly become a sought-after star for roles that demand both vulnerability and ferocity. She balances the grace of a ballerina with the cold precision of an assassin, embodying the paradox at the heart of her character. In the opening scenes, her quiet expressions convey grief more effectively than any line of dialogue, and later her tightly controlled physicality communicates rage and determination. One standout moment comes when she sits silently in a dimly lit room, clutching a relic from her family's past. The way her hands tremble while her face remains frozen reveals the inner conflict better than words could. When the film demands explosive action, she delivers with convincing agility, her movements sharp and decisive, yet never losing the sense of emotional weight driving her forward. Keanu Reeves reprises his role as Winston's right hand and offers a restrained, grounded performance. Reeves does not dominate the screen with excessive dialogue but instead uses silence, posture, and controlled delivery to underscore his character's authority. His brief but impactful scenes remind viewers why his presence in this franchise is magnetic. In one exchange with Rooney, his deliberate pauses before speaking amplify tension, showing how his mastery of timing turns even minimal lines into powerful beats. Reeves's chemistry with Ana de Armas works because he underplays, allowing her emotional storm to take center stage while still giving the sense of an unshakable pillar in the chaos around her. Ian McShane as Winston delivers his trademark blend of elegance and menace. Every line he utters carries weight, not because of volume but because of precision. His sly smirk and measured tone establish him as a man who wields power without needing to raise his voice. There is a memorable moment when Winston offers Rooney a chance at information but withholds it just long enough to twist the knife emotionally. McShane's ability to drip disdain into a single phrase makes him a scene stealer, reminding audiences that authority in this world comes not only from bullets but from words wielded like weapons. Anjelica Huston returns as the director, and her performance adds layers of gravitas. She brings a matriarchal quality that oscillates between nurturing and ruthless, often in the same breath. When she delivers a monologue about the sacrifices demanded by the life Rooney has chosen, her vocal choices, sharp intonations softened suddenly by almost maternal warmth, transform the scene into something unforgettable. Huston makes the audience feel the weight of tradition and consequence, grounding the assassin mythology in a deeply human cost. Supporting players add texture, with some standing out despite limited screen time. Gabriel Byrne, as one of the shadowy high-table figures, projects authority through stillness, his subtle gestures, like adjusting a cufflink mid-threat, creating unease. Conversely, a few minor characters fall into the trap of window dressing. Certain henchmen and allies speak their lines with a stiffness that makes them feel like placeholders rather than individuals in this universe. These moments remind us how crucial casting is in a world built on larger-than-life personalities. When even one small role feels hollow, the immersion cracks. What elevates Ballerina's performances overall is the interplay between physicality and emotion. Ana de Armas's fight sequences are choreographed not just for spectacle but to reveal character, each strike or dodge shaped by grief and purpose. Her chemistry with Reeves and McShane keeps the narrative grounded, while Huston injects gravitas that ties the themes of duty and sacrifice together. Even when dialogue thins, the actors rely on body language, eye contact, and silence to communicate volumes. There are, however, moments when certain performances feel misaligned with the material. A few emotional beats are rushed, particularly in scenes where supporting characters express loyalty or betrayal. Instead of layering nuance, some actors deliver their lines with flatness that contrasts too sharply against the textured performances of the leads. These weaker moments hold back the impact of otherwise strong writing. Still, the film thrives because its key performers rise above these inconsistencies. Ana de Armas proves she can lead an action film without losing the vulnerability that makes audiences care. Reeves demonstrates how restraint can speak louder than action. McShane and Huston provide gravitas that anchors the heightened world in something real and chilling. Together, they create a tapestry of performances where even the smallest gesture or pause can resonate long after the credits roll. Ballerina may be a high-octane expansion of the John Wick universe, but it succeeds on the strength of its actors as much as its choreography. By turning written beats into lived emotion, the performers transform what could have been a standard revenge thriller into a story pulsing with humanity and consequence. Direction is often the invisible hand that determines whether a film becomes a fully realized vision or a fragmented collection of good ideas. In Ballerina, directed by Len Wiseman, that hand is visible in nearly every frame. Known for his work in genre-driven action films, Wiseman approaches this project with a clear intent: to blend balletic grace with lethal violence, creating a style that mirrors the paradox of the protagonist herself. The result is a film that feels both familiar within the John Wick universe and distinct in its own right. One of the first things that stands out is Wiseman's control over tone. From the opening sequence, he establishes a world steeped in grief and ritual. The pacing is deliberate, almost meditative, before it erupts into bursts of explosive action. This rhythm mirrors Rooney's journey, moving from quiet reflection to violent release. Wiseman resists the temptation to fill every moment with noise or movement. Instead, he allows silence and stillness to carry emotional weight. This patience in direction builds tension and gives the audience space to connect with Rooney beyond the spectacle of her battles. In terms of visual style, Wiseman shows a clear preference for long tracking shots during action sequences. These fluid camera movements immerse the audience directly into the choreography of combat, echoing the franchise's trademark emphasis on precision. Instead of relying on rapid-fire cuts that disorient the viewer, Wiseman's shots highlight the physicality of Ana de Armas's performance, letting her movements tell the story. The fight sequences unfold like brutal dances, with the camera acting as a partner gliding alongside her. This stylistic choice not only underscores the ballerina motif, but also ensures that the audience experiences every strike and dodge with clarity. At the same time, Wiseman uses abrupt cuts sparingly but effectively, often to transition from the quiet aftermath of violence to the next looming threat. This editing rhythm prevents the film from falling into monotony. The contrast between flowing movement and sudden interruption mirrors the tension of Rooney's life, moments of control suddenly shattered by chaos. It also reflects Wiseman's understanding of pacing, as he refuses to let the film stagnate even when the tone leans heavily on atmosphere. Close-ups play a significant role in shaping the emotional ride. Wiseman frequently frames Rooney in tight shots that linger on her expressions, capturing grief, rage, and fleeting moments of tenderness. These intimate visuals counterbalance the grandeur of wide cityscapes and elaborate set pieces. A particularly striking example occurs in a scene where Rooney prepares for battle, the camera holding on her face as she steadies her breathing. The absence of dialogue allows the audience to share in her internal preparation, a choice that elevates the tension once the action explodes. Where Wiseman shows the most confidence is in guiding his actors. Ana de Armas benefits from a director who understands how to draw out both physical prowess and emotional depth. Wiseman does not overburden her with unnecessary exposition. Instead, he creates space for performance to emerge through gesture, silence, and motion. His collaboration with Keanu Reeves, Ian McShane, and Angelica Huston also reflects trust in seasoned performers. Rather than micromanaging, he shapes their roles with framing and pacing, ensuring their gravitas supports the story without overshadowing the protagonist. However, there are moments where directorial decisions falter. Wiseman occasionally leans too heavily into stylization, risking aesthetic over substance. Some sequences linger longer than necessary on visual spectacle, slowing momentum at points when the narrative demands urgency. Similarly, the reliance on neon-soaked backdrops and shadow-heavy interiors, while visually striking, can feel derivative of earlier John Wick entries. While the goal is to maintain continuity with the universe, these moments occasionally blur the line between homage and repetition. Despite these missteps, Wiseman's directorial control largely strengthens the film's identity. His commitment to blending elegance with brutality gives Ballerina a distinct texture. The ballet metaphor is not just a gimmick but a guiding principle for staging action and shaping character. Each confrontation feels choreographed with intentional rhythm, as though the violence itself is part of a performance. This thematic consistency demonstrates a director who knows exactly what he wants the audience to feel: awe, the spectacle, and empathy for the woman at its center. Another key element of Wiseman's vision is world-building through staging. He places Rooney in environments that feel simultaneously intimate and expansive. A deserted theater becomes both a training ground and a symbolic reflection of her past. Shadowed corridors evoke secrecy and entrapment, while wide, ornate ballrooms emphasize the grandeur of the forces she fights against. By carefully choosing how scenes are staged, Wiseman turns locations into silent characters, each reinforcing the protagonist's struggle. Ultimately, the success of Ballerina lies in the director's ability to weave coherence from spectacle. Wiseman ensures that even the most elaborate fight sequence serves character and story rather than existing as a detached set piece. He embraces the visual language of ballet: flow, grace, rhythm, while grounding it in the brutality of survival. This balance of artistry and grit reflects the film's core identity and sets it apart from being just another spin-off. Ballerina proves that direction is not only about orchestrating visuals but about sculpting emotion, pacing, and identity. Wiseman's vision steers every choice, from the way a camera lingers on a trembling hand to how a room is lit during a climactic standoff. While not without flaws, his decisions ultimately heighten the story, turning Ballerina into an experience that feels purposeful and resonant. The director's fingerprints are everywhere, and they guide the film into being more than just an expansion of a beloved franchise. It becomes its own dance of grief, vengeance, and survival. Editing is the invisible craft that determines how a film breathes, when it builds, and when it releases. In Ballerina, the editing is not just a mechanical arrangement of scenes but a carefully designed rhythm that shapes how we feel about Rooney's journey. The work of editors keeps the narrative moving while preserving moments of stillness, and this balance is crucial in a film that straddles the line between introspection and violent spectacle. The first thing noticeable about the editing is its smoothness. Transitions between scenes rarely call attention to themselves, allowing the story to flow without jarring interruptions. Early in the film, sequences of Rooney training are intercut with images of her past, and the dissolves are seamless. The edits here do not just move the story forward but create emotional resonance by connecting her present determination with past trauma. This demonstrates how editing can serve both plot and theme simultaneously. Montages are another central device. A standout example is the training sequence that establishes Rooney's discipline and transformation. Rather than racing through disconnected shots, the montage unfolds with careful pacing. Each cut lingers long enough for the audience to absorb physical detail, like the strain in her muscles or the repetition of her movements. This patience makes the montage more impactful, showing that progress is grueling rather than instantaneous. The rhythm of the cuts mirrors the rhythm of her body, creating a visceral connection between character and viewer. When it comes to the overall pacing across acts, the film displays deliberate variety. The first act moves slowly, immersing us in Rooney's grief and the emptiness that drives her. Shots are longer, edits more restrained, giving the audience time to feel the weight of her loss. This deliberate slowness sets up a stark contrast with the second act, where the pace accelerates as she enters the violent world of assassins. Here, cuts become sharper, sequences shorten, and the rhythm of the film sprints forward, echoing the urgency of her mission. By the third act, the pacing finds a middle ground, alternating between frantic action and pauses for reflection, allowing the conclusion to feel earned rather than rushed. Cross-cutting is employed effectively to build suspense. During one of the film's most gripping sequences, Rooney infiltrates a heavily guarded compound while the narrative simultaneously cuts to her allies preparing an escape route. The tension arises from the audience knowing both strands of action are converging, and each cut brings them closer together. The editors use this device not for confusion but to heighten anticipation, giving the sequence a heartbeat that accelerates toward resolution. Flashbacks also play a key role in structure. Rather than appearing randomly, they are placed with precision at moments where Rooney's resolve is tested. The cuts to childhood memories or fragments of her family life are brief but poignant, often lasting only a few seconds. This brevity prevents the film from losing momentum while still deepening our understanding of her psyche. The fragmented nature of the flashbacks mirrors her own fractured memory, and the editing ensures they feel like sudden emotional intrusions rather than extended detours. Silence and restraint are tools the editors trust, which sets Ballerina apart from many modern action films. During a confrontation scene in the rehearsal hall, the decision to hold the shot and delay the next cut allows tension to simmer in the quiet before violence erupts. Instead of rapid cutting to manufacture energy, the editors rely on stillness to create suspense. This restraint highlights the contrast when action does arrive, making it feel explosive and inevitable. Of course, not every choice lands perfectly. There are moments, particularly in the midsection, where the rhythm feels uneven. A few extended fight sequences linger longer than necessary, with edits that hold shots past their emotional peak. While this choice may be intended to showcase choreography, it occasionally risks dulling momentum. Conversely, some quieter character exchanges are trimmed too tightly, cutting away before emotions fully settle, leaving the scenes feeling slightly rushed. These instances are minor but noticeable in a film otherwise marked by control. What stands out most is how the editing amplifies emotion. In one particularly powerful scene, the cuts alternate between Rooney fighting for her life and a childhood memory of her dancing on stage. The juxtaposition of violence and innocence is not just thematic but emotional, as the editing forces the audience to experience her inner conflict viscerally. This kind of editing choice transforms narrative beats into unforgettable emotional punches. The rhythm of Ballerina is also notable for avoiding the pitfalls of rapid-fire cutting that plague many contemporary action films. Instead of disorienting the viewer, the film maintains clarity. We always know where characters are in space, how fights unfold, and what their stakes are. This respect for spatial continuity makes the film both more immersive and more satisfying, ensuring the audience experiences intensity without confusion. By the time the credits roll, the editing has shaped a journey that feels deliberate, controlled, and emotionally resonant. It begins with long, patient cuts that let grief breathe, shifts into accelerated sequences that embody urgency, and concludes with a rhythm that balances resolution with reflection. While not flawless, the overall editorial design transforms Ballerina from a straightforward spin-off into a textured experience that values emotion as much as spectacle. In the end, editing in Ballerina is both functional and expressive. It controls time, sculpts tension, and creates space for character growth. Whether through seamless transitions, carefully built montages, suspenseful cross-cutting, or the courage to hold on silence, the editors ensure that the film's rhythm serves its story. The pacing choices make the narrative gripping, and the few stumbles do little to diminish the overall impact. Editing, in this case, becomes an unseen but undeniable star, turning Ballerina into a film that feels as much like a dance of images as it does a story of vengeance. Editing is the invisible craft that determines how a film breathes, when it builds, and when it releases. In Ballerina, the editing is not just a mechanical arrangement of scenes but a carefully designed rhythm that shapes how we feel about Rooney's journey. The work of editors keeps the narrative moving while preserving moments of stillness, and this balance is crucial in a film that straddles the line between introspection and violent spectacle. The first thing noticeable about the editing is its smoothness. Transitions between scenes rarely call attention to themselves, allowing the story to flow without jarring interruptions. Early in the film, sequences of Rooney training are intercut with images of her past, and the dissolves are seamless. The edits here do not just move the story forward but create emotional resonance by connecting her present determination with past trauma. This demonstrates how editing can serve both plot and theme simultaneously. Montages are another central device. A standout example is the training sequence that establishes Rooney's discipline and transformation. Rather than racing through disconnected shots, the montage unfolds with careful pacing. Each cut lingers long enough for the audience to absorb physical detail, like the strain in her muscles or the repetition of her movements. This patience makes the montage more impactful, showing that progress is grueling rather than instantaneous. The rhythm of the cuts mirrors the rhythm of her body, creating a visceral connection between character and viewer. When it comes to the overall pacing across acts, the film displays deliberate variety. The first act moves slowly, immersing us in Rooney's grief and the emptiness that drives her. Shots are longer, edits more restrained, giving the audience time to feel the weight of her loss. This deliberate slowness sets up a stark contrast with the second act, where the pace accelerates as she enters the violent world of assassins. Here, cuts become sharper, sequences shorten, and the rhythm of the film sprints forward, echoing the urgency of her mission. By the third act, the pacing finds a middle ground, alternating between frantic action and pauses for reflection, allowing the conclusion to feel earned rather than rushed. Cross-cutting is employed effectively to build suspense. During one of the film's most gripping sequences, Rooney infiltrates a heavily guarded compound while the narrative simultaneously cuts to her allies preparing an escape route. The tension arises from the audience knowing both strands of action are converging, and each cut brings them closer together. The editors use this device not for confusion but to heighten anticipation, giving the sequence a heartbeat that accelerates toward resolution. Flashbacks also play a key role in structure. Rather than appearing randomly, they are placed with precision at moments where Rooney's resolve is tested. The cuts to childhood memories or fragments of her family life are brief but poignant, often lasting only a few seconds. This brevity prevents the film from losing momentum while still deepening our understanding of her psyche. The fragmented nature of the flashbacks mirrors her own fractured memory, and the editing ensures they feel like sudden emotional intrusions rather than extended detours. Silence and restraint are tools the editors trust, which sets Ballerina apart from many modern action films. During a confrontation scene in the rehearsal hall, the decision to hold the shot and delay the next cut allows tension to simmer in the quiet before violence erupts. Instead of rapid cutting to manufacture energy, the editors rely on stillness to create suspense. This restraint highlights the contrast when action does arrive, making it feel explosive and inevitable. Of course, not every choice lands perfectly. There are moments, particularly in the midsection, where the rhythm feels uneven. A few extended fight sequences linger longer than necessary, with edits that hold shots past their emotional peak. While this choice may be intended to showcase choreography, it occasionally risks dulling momentum. Conversely, some quieter character exchanges are trimmed too tightly, cutting away before emotions fully settle, leaving the scenes feeling slightly rushed. These instances are minor but noticeable in a film otherwise marked by control. What stands out most is how the editing amplifies emotion. In one particularly powerful scene, the cuts alternate between Rooney fighting for her life and a childhood memory of her dancing on stage. The juxtaposition of violence and innocence is not just thematic but emotional, as the editing forces the audience to experience her inner conflict viscerally. This kind of editing choice transforms narrative beats into unforgettable emotional punches. The rhythm of Ballerina is also notable for avoiding the pitfalls of rapid-fire cutting that plague many contemporary action films. Instead of disorienting the viewer, the film maintains clarity. We always know where characters are in space, how fights unfold, and what their stakes are. This respect for spatial continuity makes the film both more immersive and more satisfying, ensuring the audience experiences intensity without confusion. By the time the credits roll, the editing has shaped a journey that feels deliberate, controlled, and emotionally resonant. It begins with long, patient cuts that let grief breathe, shifts into accelerated sequences that embody urgency, and concludes with a rhythm that balances resolution with reflection. While not flawless, the overall editorial design transforms Ballerina from a straightforward spin-off into a textured experience that values emotion as much as spectacle. In the end, editing in Ballerina is both functional and expressive. It controls time, sculpts tension, and creates space for character growth. Whether through seamless transitions, carefully built montages, suspenseful cross-cutting, or the courage to hold on silence, the editors ensure that the film's rhythm serves its story. The pacing choices make the narrative gripping, and the few stumbles do little to diminish the overall impact. Editing, in this case, becomes an unseen but undeniable star, turning Ballerina into a film that feels as much like a dance of images as it does a story of vengeance. Music in Ballerina is not just a background element, but a vital layer of storytelling that breathes life into the film's emotional and thematic fabric. The soundtrack and score function like an invisible narrator, guiding the audience through grief, rage, and fleeting moments of hope. Composer Marco Beltrami delivers a soundscape that merges classical influences with modern intensity, mirroring the duality at the heart of Rooney's character, a ballerina whose grace is now channeled into lethal violence. From the very first moments, music establishes tone. The opening scene, quiet and reflective, is underscored by a haunting piano motif. The sparse arrangement allows space for silence, emphasizing Rooney's isolation while also foreshadowing the melancholy that runs through the film. This motif recurs throughout, evolving in instrumentation as her journey progresses. By the finale, the same melody swells into a full orchestral arrangement, signaling not closure but transformation. The recurrence of this theme binds the film together, reminding the audience of where she began and how far she has come. Beltrami weaves classical textures into the score, borrowing the elegance of ballet music but twisting it into darker, more percussive arrangements. Strings often dominate, but rather than playing softly, they are sharp and insistent, mimicking the slicing movements of combat. Percussion underscores action sequences with a relentless rhythm, giving each fight a sense of choreography and pulse. These choices ensure that music is not merely decorative but rhythmically tied to the physicality on screen, turning battles into something that feels like performance art as much as brutality. Licensed music also makes carefully chosen appearances. A few tracks surface during transitional sequences, often to provide contrast. For example, a vintage ballad plays over a montage of Rooney preparing weapons, the romantic melody clashing ironically with the violence it foreshadows. These moments of dissonance give the film texture, highlighting the absurdity of beauty and horror colliding. Another striking instance is the use of an electronic beat during a nightclub confrontation. The pounding music matches both the physical rhythm of the fight and the environment itself, immersing the audience in a setting where sound and action are inseparable. Silence is used just as effectively as music. Wiseman and Beltrami understand that restraint can be as powerful as orchestration. Several critical scenes are left unscored, allowing the sound of breath, footsteps, or the scraping of metal to dominate. In one pivotal moment, Rooney faces her enemy in a standoff with no score, only the distant hum of the environment. The absence of music magnifies tension, making every gesture feel monumental. When music finally returns, it lands with greater impact because of the silence that preceded it. Recurring musical cues tie specific themes and characters together. Rooney's motif, introduced with piano and later expanded with strings, serves as her emotional anchor. Antagonists are marked with harsher, discordant tones, low brass and electronic distortion that signal menace. Even side characters benefit from musical identification, with softer or warmer textures attached to fleeting allies. These cues operate on a subconscious level, helping the audience track emotional alignments without explicit dialogue. One of the most memorable uses of score arrives in a scene where Rooney dances alone in a rehearsal space. The music begins delicately, almost classical, before percussion layers in and transforms it into something violent. The shift mirrors her transformation, reminding the audience that her artistry and her vengeance are inseparable. This scene would lose much of its power without the score guiding the emotional progression. Of course, not every musical choice lands perfectly. There are moments where the score leans too heavily into bombast, overwhelming quieter emotions. A few sequences push percussion so intensely that it risks drowning out subtler character beats. While these instances do not derail the film, they highlight how thin the line can be between amplification and overstatement. Still, when the balance is struck, the results are unforgettable. In the final confrontation, Beltrami layers Rooney's recurring motif with full orchestral power, adding choral elements that elevate the moment from a simple fight to something operatic. The music transforms the climax into an experience that feels larger than the plot itself, almost mythic in resonance. This is where the score transcends function and becomes a character of its own. What makes the soundtrack and score so effective overall is their ability to manipulate tension and emotion without calling undue attention to themselves. The interplay of recurring motifs, licensed contrasts, and strategic silence ensures that the film never falls into monotony. Each choice feels intentional, designed to either heighten drama, deepen empathy, or create ironic distance. By the time the credits roll, the soundscape has etched itself into memory. The melodies linger, not as isolated tracks but as emotional imprints tied to specific images and moments. Ballerina proves that music is not merely accompaniment but a partner in storytelling. The score and soundtrack elevate key scenes from effective to unforgettable, embedding emotion into every beat and ensuring that the film resonates long after the final frame fades. Themes and messages form the backbone of any narrative, and in Ballerina, 2025, they are woven into the very fabric of its story. At first glance, the film appears to be a straightforward tale of revenge, following a protagonist driven by the loss of loved ones and the search for justice in a violent world. Yet beneath the surface, the movie begins to reveal deeper explorations of identity, morality, love, fear, and the complex human need for redemption. These ideas transform what could have been a standard action film into something layered, where viewers are invited to reflect on the cost of violence and the meaning of self in a chaotic world. The most obvious theme is revenge, the central motivation of the protagonist. The movie spends much of its runtime examining not only the mechanics of vengeance but also the emotional toll it demands. Revenge here is shown as both empowering and destructive. The protagonist finds strength and direction through the desire to right a wrong, yet every step deeper into the cycle of violence blurs the line between justice and obsession. Scenes of brutal combat and relentless pursuit are thrilling on the surface, but thematically, they raise the question: at what point does revenge cease to be righteous and become an endless loop of destruction? The film does not shy away from showing the psychological cost of pursuing this path, making the audience wonder if the protagonist is truly avenging the past or becoming enslaved by it. Closely tied to revenge is the theme of identity. Ballerina, 2025, consistently explores who the protagonist is beneath the veneer of a fighter. Is she defined by the tragedy that shaped her, the enemies she hunts, or the moments of humanity that break through her hardened exterior? The use of symbolic imagery, such as mirrors, fleeting moments of vulnerability, or quiet exchanges with allies, underscores the search for self amid chaos. The movie also shows how identity can be fractured by trauma, and how reclaiming or reshaping it requires more than simply taking lives in the name of vengeance. Identity in this story becomes an evolving process, not a fixed truth, and the protagonist's struggle mirrors the universal question of whether we are defined by our pain, our choices, or our relationships. Redemption is another powerful current running beneath the story. While revenge drives the action, redemption seems to haunt the protagonist as a quieter, almost unconscious goal. Certain moments, hesitations in fights, sparing of lives, or emotional flashbacks, indicate a yearning for something beyond bloodshed. Redemption here is not portrayed as an easy or guaranteed destination but as a fragile possibility. The tension lies in whether a character consumed by violence can ever truly find peace. The film leaves this question partially unresolved, forcing the audience to grapple with whether vengeance and redemption can coexist, or if one inevitably destroys the possibility of the other. Power and control also emerge as significant themes, not just in terms of physical dominance but also emotional and psychological influence. The antagonists embody corrupt power, using fear and manipulation to maintain control, while the protagonist represents a challenge to that dominance. Yet the narrative complicates this binary by showing how power shifts constantly and how even righteous battles for control can corrupt. In this way, Ballerina, 2025, suggests that power itself is not inherently good or evil. It is the choices surrounding its use that define its moral weight. Love, though understated, quietly permeates the story. The protagonist's motivations are born from love, love for family, love for what was lost, and a yearning for connection even in the midst of violence. Brief but poignant scenes of intimacy or memory reveal the emotional core driving her forward. These moments remind viewers that beneath the rage and combat, there is a person longing for something human and tender. Love in this film is not a grand romantic gesture, but a reminder of what violence threatens to erase. Fear plays its own role as both a personal and societal theme. The protagonist is forced to confront her own fears of loss, failure, and self-destruction, while the antagonists wield fear as a weapon to control others. By showing how fear can paralyze or empower, the movie adds dimension to the psychological battles underpinning the physical ones. Thematic echoes run throughout Ballerina, 2025, creating resonance beyond individual scenes. Repeated motifs, such as cycles of violence, shadows, silence, or recurring pieces of dialogue, reinforce ideas of inevitability and the struggle for meaning. The strongest thematic moments are communicated visually rather than through dialogue. Extended silences, carefully framed images of solitude, or moments where the action slows just enough to highlight the weight of a choice. These scenes speak louder than words, making the film's thematic exploration feel organic rather than forced. However, the film is not without contradictions. At times, it seems to glorify the very violence it critiques, leaving audiences unsure whether it is condemning revenge or reveling in its spectacle. Similarly, the protagonist's arc can feel caught between seeking vengeance and seeking peace, sending mixed signals about whether the story ultimately celebrates her descent into violence or mourns it. These inconsistencies do not ruin the film but make it richer for debate, allowing different viewers to interpret its message in different ways. In the end, Ballerina, 2025, is not just a tale of action and spectacle but a meditation on the human condition. Its themes of revenge, identity, redemption, power, love, and fear intertwine to form a narrative that lingers long after the final scene. Some viewers may walk away inspired by the protagonist's strength and resilience, while others may feel unsettled by the ambiguity of her journey. Either way, the film succeeds in sparking reflection, reminding us that beneath every act of violence lies a deeper question about who we are, what we seek, and what we are willing to sacrifice to find meaning. Visual effects and CGI in Ballerina, 2025, serve as an important element in shaping the immersive world the film creates. While action-driven movies often rely heavily on practical choreography and physical sets, the inclusion of visual effects here aims to elevate the spectacle, extend the possibilities of physical performance, and enhance the thematic undercurrents of the story. The success of these effects lies in how seamlessly they blend with the practical aspects of the film, maintaining the gritty and grounded feel of the narrative while also pushing certain moments into heightened cinematic territory. The strongest aspect of the visual effects in Ballerina, 2025, is how they avoid overshadowing the story. Instead of being flashy additions that distract, they are integrated to deepen the audience's immersion. For instance, background enhancements like cityscapes, weather effects, or subtle environmental details create a heightened realism without calling attention to themselves. These small touches help establish the setting as both believable and stylized, placing the protagonist in a world that feels larger than life yet grounded in its emotional core. When these enhancements remain invisible, they succeed most powerfully, as viewers become absorbed in the film without consciously noting the presence of CGI. One area where the film truly shines is in its use of visual effects during action sequences. Ballerina, 2025, is, at its heart, a story about movement, physicality, and precision, so any visual effect must serve to emphasize those qualities rather than overshadow them. The use of CGI for background destruction, enhanced choreography, and fluid camera movements allows for action scenes that flow with both intensity and elegance. In scenes where the protagonist faces overwhelming odds, digital compositing extends the number of adversaries or scales the environment to create a sense of insurmountable challenge. These moments demonstrate how effects can work in service of the story, amplifying stakes and danger without making the film feel like it has abandoned its grounded aesthetic. Motion capture technology is another notable component in certain sequences. While most of the physical action is rooted in real stunt work, some enemy movements and large-scale confrontations rely on digitally assisted performances. The fluidity of these captures ensures that the energy of the fights remains dynamic and believable, even when the scale tips into exaggerated territory. A particular sequence involving a night battle in a rain-soaked setting stands out as a moment where motion capture, water simulation, and practical stunt choreography merge seamlessly, creating a striking visual blend that is both technically impressive and emotionally resonant. Lighting plays an essential role in selling visual effects, and the cinematography and CGI teams work hand in hand here. Digital effects are carefully integrated with natural shadows, reflections, and textures, preventing the sense of artificiality that often plagues VFX-heavy films. For example, explosions and fire effects are layered with convincing detail, their light bouncing realistically off characters and environments. Similarly, atmospheric details like smoke, mist, or embers drifting through scenes elevate the mood and add texture, enhancing the thematic tone of danger and fragility. Yet, not every effect is flawless. In moments where the film leans heavily into large-scale digital spectacle, there are instances where the CGI becomes more noticeable. Certain wide shots of collapsing structures or heavily composited environments can appear slightly less grounded, reminding the audience of the digital nature of the scene. These moments, while not frequent, risk pulling viewers out of the otherwise seamless immersion. It is in these instances that the balance between practical and digital work falters slightly, making one wish for a greater reliance on practical stunt coordination or miniature-based effects to maintain consistency. The practical effects also deserve mention, as they often form the foundation upon which CGI builds. Blood squibs, real pyrotechnics, and physical stunt choreography ground the violence in a tangible reality, while digital elements expand their scale. This combination ensures that the action remains visceral rather than cartoonish. For example, hand-to-hand combat scenes feature practical hits and falls, with CGI used sparingly to enhance impact or extend environments. The result is a blend where the audience feels the physical strain of combat while still experiencing the heightened scale of cinema. Beyond spectacle, the effects also serve a symbolic purpose. Certain sequences, such as dreamlike flashbacks or heightened emotional visions, employ stylized CGI to reflect the inner state of the protagonist. These surreal moments contrast sharply with the gritty realism of the fight sequences, reminding the audience that the story is not only about external battles but also internal struggles. The blending of grounded and surreal effects gives the film a dual quality, oscillating between hard-edged realism and poetic imagery, reinforcing themes of identity and trauma. One of the film's most technically impressive achievements is its use of long tracking shots enhanced by CGI stitching. Seamless transitions between practical stunts, digital environments, and composited effects create sequences that feel continuous and unbroken, drawing the audience into the flow of the protagonist's journey. These moments demonstrate not just technical brilliance but also narrative clarity, as the smoothness of the visual presentation mirrors the intensity of the character's resolve. Ultimately, the visual effects in CGI in Ballerina, 2025, achieve what all great effects work should. They enhance without distracting, support without dominating, and contribute to the emotional and thematic resonance of the story. While there are occasional slips where digital work becomes too noticeable, the overall integration of effects into the film is remarkably successful. They allow the movie to balance realism with stylized spectacle, grounding the viewer in an authentic experience while still offering the cinematic wonder audiences expect. In the final analysis, Ballerina, 2025, uses visual effects not as a crutch but as a tool, one that extends the possibilities of its storytelling and strengthens its thematic impact. Whether subtle environmental enhancements, emotionally charged surreal sequences, or grand-scale action moments, the effects consistently aim to serve the narrative rather than overshadow it. This commitment to restraint and purpose ensures that the film's CGI becomes a complement to the choreography, cinematography, and performances, helping Ballerina carve out an identity that feels both visceral and cinematic. Set design and location choices in Ballerina, 2025, are integral to how the film establishes its tone and emotional weight. Production design is never just about background. It actively shapes the viewer's perception of characters and events, creating a world that feels both believable and heightened for cinematic effect. From the gritty, lived-in interiors to the expansive exteriors that stretch the narrative across contrasting geographies, the film's design builds a visual language that supports the story's exploration of loss, vengeance, and resilience. Every set piece, whether small or grand, works to reinforce the protagonist's journey and the overarching themes that frame the film. The opening sequences of Ballerina, 2025, establish a mood through intimate interiors, particularly the protagonist's living space. Her apartment, though modest, is filled with subtle set dressing that reflects her discipline and emotional history. Sparse furniture, muted colors, and worn textures suggest both practicality and isolation. Small details, like an old photograph tucked into a mirror or a scuffed pair of ballet shoes resting in a corner, hint at her personal past and inner conflicts without resorting to dialogue. These objects function as silent extensions of character, providing a sense of authenticity that makes her environment feel not only lived in but emotionally resonant. As the story unfolds and she steps into more dangerous territory, the production design broadens to include locations that mirror the film's tonal shifts. Underground clubs, shadowy training halls, and claustrophobic alleyways create a sense of menace and unpredictability. These environments are layered with detail, flickering neon lights, graffiti-stained walls, and scattered props that suggest a society existing on the margins. Such choices do more than create atmosphere. They visually underline the protagonist's descent into a darker world, a place where rules are blurred and survival depends on both strength and cunning. The design choices here highlight contrasts, visually separating her disciplined background from the chaotic environments she must now navigate. One of the film's most striking design achievements is its use of contrasting cultural and geographical settings. Large-scale outdoor shots showcase sweeping cityscapes and landscapes that amplify the story's scope. These locations are not mere backdrops but serve thematic purposes, often representing freedom, entrapment, or transformation. A sequence set in a sprawling, icy environment uses the stark whiteness and emptiness of the terrain to reflect isolation and inner turmoil. In contrast, densely populated urban streets filled with color and noise symbolize overwhelming conflict and the tension between individuality and anonymity. The shifting landscapes give audiences both a physical and psychological map of the character's evolving state. The production team strikes a careful balance between real-world locations and studio-built sets. Real locations bring a natural sense of grit and unpredictability, with imperfections that enhance authenticity. Streets, markets, and abandoned warehouses carry an organic texture impossible to replicate fully in a controlled studio environment. On the other hand, certain highly choreographed action sequences demand precision, safety, and control, leading to the creation of studio sets designed to mimic or extend real locations. These studio builds are crafted with meticulous attention to detail, ensuring continuity in tone and believability. Whether a cracked wall, the placement of a prop, or the texture of flooring, every element feels purposeful in shaping how characters move and interact with their surroundings. Props are another essential component of Ballerina's production design. Weapons, personal trinkets, and functional everyday objects are chosen with intent to reflect character and circumstance. For instance, the protagonist's choice of weapon throughout much of the film reflects both elegance and lethality, underscoring her unique balance of artistry and violence. Similarly, small personal items, kept or discarded, signal shifts in her emotional journey. The careful curation of props allows for deeper storytelling without relying on exposition, embedding meaning in objects that often pass quickly on screen but leave an impression on attentive viewers. Lighting interacts closely with set design to define mood and thematic resonance. Dimly lit interiors, illuminated by single sources like flickering lamps or slivers of daylight through cracked blinds, evoke feelings of secrecy, danger, and intimacy. In contrast, expansive exteriors use natural light or large artificial sources to heighten spectacle. This interplay ensures that sets are not static environments but dynamic backdrops that shift in tone depending on narrative needs. The result is a layered visual experience where environment and atmosphere communicate as much as dialogue or performance. What makes the production design of Ballerina, 2025, particularly effective is how it captures contrasts between discipline and chaos, intimacy and scale, light and shadow. Cramped interiors emphasize personal struggle, while vast exteriors showcase both vulnerability and power. These choices echo the duality within the protagonist herself, a character caught between grace and brutality. By reflecting inner conflicts in external spaces, the sets and locations deepen the audience's understanding of the story without resorting to overt explanation. There are moments where the design risks becoming too stylized, leaning heavily on visual metaphor at the expense of realism. For example, some sequences take place in locations that feel almost too perfectly aligned with the protagonist's emotional state, which may come across as contrived. However, these instances are rare, and for most of the film the design finds a strong balance between symbolic weight and authenticity. Ultimately, the set design and location choices in Ballerina, 2025, succeed in creating a world that is both believable and cinematically heightened. By grounding the story in environments that feel tangible, layered, and reflective of character psychology, the film immerses its audience in a journey that resonates on both visual and emotional levels. From the smallest prop to the largest landscape, every design choice serves to support the narrative, enhance performances, and ensure that the film's world feels as alive and textured as the characters inhabiting it. The dialogue and script in Ballerina, 2025, are carefully crafted to balance character, theme, and plot while respecting the action-driven nature of the film. In a movie like this, where physicality and visual storytelling are as important as words, the script avoids unnecessary verbosity. It relies on dialogue that is sharp and economical, often delivering meaning beneath the surface through subtext rather than exposition. Characters speak with intention, and their words are designed to reveal as much about who they are as about what is happening in the story. From the very beginning, the script establishes tone through concise dialogue. Early exchanges are deliberate in their sparseness, mirroring the protagonist's internal state. She is a woman defined by discipline and trauma, and the script captures this in how she communicates. Short lines, fragmented responses, and minimalistic exchanges create a sense of emotional reserve. Yet within this restraint lies subtext. Her silence or brevity is often more revealing than if she had spoken at length. This approach allows audiences to lean in, listening not just to words but to pauses, gestures, and the weight of what goes unsaid. When dialogue becomes more expansive, it is usually in service of theme or character revelation. For instance, in scenes where the protagonist confronts her allies or adversaries, conversations carry layered meanings. A single line about trust, vengeance, or identity often doubles as commentary on the larger world of the film. These lines are not just functional but symbolic, pointing to the tension between control and chaos, grace and violence. The script rarely wastes words, using each exchange to build either the personal journey of the protagonist or the atmosphere of the narrative. The antagonists in the film are also given dialogue that reveals their worldview. Rather than relying on clichés, their lines are written to reflect ideology and motive. A carefully chosen phrase can communicate menace more effectively than overt threats. These characters often speak in ways that highlight contrasts with the protagonist, drawing attention to the conflict not just as physical but ideological. Their dialogue becomes a mirror against which the protagonist's values are tested. This ensures that confrontations feel multidimensional, extending beyond the surface level of action into psychological and thematic territory. One of the most notable strengths of the script is its ability to use dialogue as a plot engine. Conversations frequently carry forward narrative developments while remaining natural. Instead of characters plainly stating what will happen next, the script embeds necessary exposition within emotionally charged exchanges. For example, a discussion about loyalty might simultaneously foreshadow betrayal or reveal a tactical plan, making the audience feel as though they are witnessing authentic interactions rather than being spoon-fed information. This technique allows the film to move quickly while maintaining narrative clarity. Silence is another key tool the script employs. In Ballerina, 2025, some of the most powerful moments occur when words are absent. These pauses are not empty but loaded with meaning. A character's decision to remain silent in response to a question can convey defiance, grief, or contemplation. The script's willingness to trust silence speaks to its confidence in visual storytelling and its respect for the audience's ability to interpret nuance. This restraint creates tension, allowing viewers to project their own interpretations into the spaces left unspoken. The script also excels at layering subtext. A seemingly casual remark may later reveal deeper importance, either by foreshadowing a turn in the story or by illuminating a hidden motive. Offhand lines often resonate in hindsight, showing how carefully constructed the dialogue is. These layers make rewatching the film rewarding, as audiences can pick up on the threads of meaning woven subtly into conversations. It is in these moments that the writing transcends pure functionality and achieves artistry. However, the script is not without its weaker moments. There are instances where dialogue leans too heavily into exposition, particularly when explaining elements of the protagonist's backstory. While necessary for clarity, some lines feel more like information delivery than organic interaction. These moments briefly interrupt the otherwise natural rhythm of the script, making the dialogue appear on the nose. Similarly, there are a few instances where characters speak in overly stylized language that does not match the grounded realism of the film's tone. Though rare, these lapses stand out because they contrast sharply with the overall sharpness of the writing. Relationships in the film are often defined through dialogue. Exchanges between the protagonist and supporting characters, whether allies or temporary partners, serve as windows into trust, loyalty, and betrayal. Simple conversations, sometimes consisting of only a handful of words, can redefine dynamics between characters. A look paired with a single phrase can shift the balance of power in a relationship. These interactions feel authentic because they rely on trust in the audience to pick up on tone and context rather than explicit explanation. What ultimately makes the dialogue and script in Ballerina, 2025, effective is their economy and precision. Every word feels chosen with care, either to drive the story forward, reveal something about character, or highlight thematic undertones. The sparseness of dialogue underscores the physical nature of the protagonist's journey, while the moments of verbal depth resonate with emotional and philosophical weight. The interplay between silence, subtext, and spoken word creates a layered experience that keeps viewers engaged not just with what is happening but with why it matters. In conclusion, the dialogue and script in Ballerina, 2025, succeed because they prioritize meaning over volume. Rather than overwhelming the film with unnecessary words, the writing trusts silence, subtext, and minimalism to communicate what matters most. The result is a script that feels sharp, natural, and layered, one that reflects character psychology and thematic depth while driving the story with efficiency. Though not flawless, its strengths far outweigh its weaknesses, making the writing a vital component of the film's immersive power. Ballerina, 2025, positions itself as an action thriller deeply rooted in the John Wick cinematic universe, and genre execution is central to its identity. As a spin-off, it carries the expectations of audiences familiar with tightly choreographed action, sleek world-building, and emotionally charged motivations. Yet it also faces the challenge of standing on its own, avoiding the trap of being merely a derivative entry. Examining how it embraces and occasionally subverts genre conventions reveals both its strengths and its vulnerabilities in appealing to action fans and broader audiences. At its core, the film belongs to the action revenge subgenre, a branch of action cinema defined by highly personal stakes and visceral storytelling. Ballerina, 2025, nails some of the classic beats expected from this style. The protagonist's motivation for vengeance is clear and emotionally driven, providing a strong foundation for the audience to invest in her journey. The setup is straightforward enough to align with genre traditions, but layered enough with character nuance to avoid feeling generic. This balance ensures viewers who love the revenge action mold feel satisfied, while leaving room for deeper thematic exploration. One of the clearest genre successes lies in its action choreography. Audiences expect thrilling set pieces, and the film delivers through extended fight sequences, inventive use of environments, and a blend of grace and brutality befitting a ballerina-trained assassin. These moments echo the intricate style of John Wick while introducing new elements tied to the protagonist's unique background. Where John Wick relied heavily on gun-fu and martial precision, Ballerina adds a balletic fluidity that refreshes the genre. The fusion of dance-like movement with violent combat is both visually striking and narratively appropriate, providing a distinguishing mark that avoids the sense of simple imitation. The film also honors the action thriller tradition by maintaining a sense of escalation. Each action sequence builds on the last, growing in complexity and stakes. This pacing is essential in genre storytelling, as it prevents repetition and fatigue. By carefully constructing scenes that differ in environment, weapon use, and choreography, the movie sustains momentum across its runtime. From claustrophobic interiors to expansive outdoor battlegrounds, the film demonstrates a command of variety while sticking to the core expectation of relentless energy. However, genre execution extends beyond spectacle into character and narrative. In this area, Ballerina works to avoid clichés, though not always successfully. The protagonist is not portrayed as an invulnerable action figure, but as someone whose discipline and emotional wounds shape her approach to conflict. This adds drama to her journey and prevents the film from falling into the trap of making her a mere archetype. That said, some secondary characters risk leaning into familiar tropes: the enigmatic mentor, the calculating villain, or the loyal ally who may or may not survive. While these roles are common in the genre and serve narrative efficiency, they occasionally feel predictable, which could dilute the freshness the film aims to establish. Another element of genre execution worth noting is tone. Action thrillers often walk a line between grit and style, and Ballerina embraces both. The grit comes from its grounded emotional core, and the physical toll violence takes on its characters. The style emerges through its sleek visual design, choreography, and heightened atmosphere. By blending these two, the movie appeals to fans of both realism and stylization, though at times the stylization may push certain moments toward excess. Theatrical lighting, symbolic imagery, or operatic staging in fight sequences might divide audiences, with some appreciating the artistry and others finding it indulgent. In terms of innovation, Ballerina injects freshness into the action-revenge genre by centering a female lead whose background in ballet meaningfully informs both her identity and combat style. This is not window dressing but a deliberate genre twist, merging the discipline of dance with the brutality of assassination. It honors genre conventions while layering in a unique lens. This approach sets it apart from more formulaic revenge tales and demonstrates how familiar tropes can be revitalized by context and detail. That said, certain narrative beats feel familiar to the point of predictability. Audiences versed in action thrillers will likely anticipate betrayals, surprise reveals, and climactic one-on-one confrontations. While the execution of these beats is strong, their predictability may limit the film's ability to feel groundbreaking. For genre purists, these familiar rhythms provide comfort and satisfaction. For those seeking innovation, the film may feel more like refinement than reinvention. Another genre dimension to consider is world building. Action thrillers in the John Wick mold thrive on intricate universes with unique rules and structures. Ballerina respects this expectation, offering glimpses into the shadowy networks and codes that govern assassins. This continuity anchors it within the larger franchise while giving audiences the dense mythology they crave. At the same time, the film introduces smaller, localized environments that keep the story personal. This blend of expansive lore and intimate storytelling ensures the movie feels both part of a larger whole and distinct in its own right. In terms of risks, the film could alienate certain fans if they expect non-stop action without narrative depth. Ballerina devotes more time to character reflection and thematic layering than some genre entries, which might slow the pace for audiences craving relentless spectacle. Conversely, viewers drawn in by its emotional promises might feel overwhelmed by extended combat sequences. Balancing these expectations is a tightrope act, and while the film manages it well overall, not all viewers will respond equally. Ultimately, Ballerina, 2025, executes its genre with both respect and creativity. It honors the revenge action tradition by delivering high-stakes combat, escalating spectacle, and emotionally driven storytelling. At the same time, it injects fresh energy by incorporating a unique protagonist, blending dance with violence, and offering a more nuanced exploration of identity and grief. While some supporting elements lean on familiar tropes and certain beats risk predictability, the film's execution demonstrates how even well-worn genres can feel revitalized through careful craftsmanship and specific innovation. Fans of the action thriller will find much to appreciate, and those seeking a new perspective within familiar territory will find it delivers just enough originality to stand apart. Social and cultural commentary in a film like Ballerina, 2025, can often be as significant as the main plot because it reflects the world from which the movie emerges. While at first glance it may seem like a straightforward revenge-driven narrative, the way it presents its characters, their struggles, and the world they navigate can reveal a great deal about contemporary society. The film's treatment of power, gender roles, justice, and morality may not always be delivered through overt dialogue, but through how the story unfolds, the choices characters make, and the environments in which they exist. A close look at these elements can uncover layers of commentary that extend far beyond the immediate narrative. One of the clearest areas where Ballerina, 2025, seems to engage with cultural commentary is its focus on a female lead in a traditionally male-dominated genre. Action and revenge films often feature male protagonists, with women relegated to secondary or victim roles. By centering the story on a woman's perspective, the film naturally comments on representation and agency. The character's drive for revenge is not only personal but symbolic of the larger conversation about how women are portrayed in media. This shift reflects changing cultural values, where audiences expect stronger, more complex female characters who can embody power without losing emotional depth. The film's willingness to put such a character at the forefront shows an awareness of evolving cultural expectations, and perhaps even critiques the history of the genre itself. Beyond representation, the film appears to grapple with questions of justice and morality that are socially relevant. The revenge narrative itself can be read as a metaphor for broader social frustrations. When institutions fail to deliver justice or fairness, individuals may feel compelled to take matters into their own hands. In that sense, Ballerina, 2025, resonates with audiences who perceive systemic flaws in real-world justice systems, corruption, or inequality. The movie might not explicitly state these parallels, but the emotional connection audiences form with the protagonist's quest highlights how such stories mirror the anxieties of society at large. Cultural commentary also emerges through the depiction of violence. Action films walk a fine line between stylizing violence for entertainment and critiquing it as part of human behavior. Ballerina, 2025, may raise questions about what violence achieves and what it costs, both for the individual and for society. If the protagonist's journey leaves her emotionally fractured despite achieving revenge, the film could be commenting on the futility of cycles of violence that echo in real-world conflicts. On the other hand, if it celebrates her victories too uncritically, it risks glamorizing violence in a way that reflects cultural desensitization. The balance between these two approaches reveals how the film positions itself on the spectrum of commentary versus pure spectacle. Another element to consider is the setting and atmosphere of the movie. The urban landscapes, underground networks, or elite spaces portrayed may all serve as metaphors for social hierarchies and divisions. If the film presents luxurious environments contrasted with gritty back alleys, it visually underscores inequality and the way power operates in different spheres. Props, costumes, and even the background characters can be loaded with cultural meaning, from the way wealth is displayed to how marginalized groups are represented. These choices can be subtle, but they influence the audience's perception of the broader cultural world the film reflects. Ballerina, 2025, may also carry cultural weight in terms of identity and self-definition. The protagonist's struggle may not only be about avenging personal loss but about asserting her identity against forces that attempt to define or control her. This speaks to contemporary cultural discussions around autonomy, empowerment, and resistance to imposed roles. Audiences who are navigating their own struggles with identity and social expectation can find resonance in how the character refuses to be silenced or sidelined. Of course, the film risks oversimplifying some of these issues. Action movies sometimes reduce complex social and cultural dynamics to black-and-white narratives for the sake of momentum. For example, If villains are portrayed as one-dimensional symbols of corruption or oppression, the commentary might feel shallow or reductive. Similarly, if the protagonist is painted as flawless, the message of empowerment risks being more symbolic than nuanced. These oversimplifications do not necessarily ruin the film but may limit its ability to generate deeper cultural conversations. At the same time, the film's commentary might not be intentional at all, but that does not diminish its impact. Audiences bring their own cultural contexts to their interpretation of stories, and even if Ballerina, 2025, was designed primarily as entertainment, its themes of vengeance, empowerment, and justice will inevitably be filtered through viewers' perspectives on current social realities. This is part of what makes cultural commentary in cinema so fascinating. It is not only about what the filmmakers deliberately insert but also about what audiences perceive in light of their own experiences. Ultimately, Ballerina, 2025, can be seen as more than just an action thriller. Through its representation of a female lead, its engagement with questions of justice and morality, its depiction of violence, and its visual portrayal of social hierarchies, the film opens itself to interpretation as a cultural text. Some moments may feel timely and powerful, while others may risk falling into clichés or overstatement. What remains clear is that the film reflects the cultural moment of its creation, whether by challenging conventions, reinforcing them, or sparking discussion about the issues audiences see mirrored on screen. In this way, Ballerina, 2025, participates in an ongoing dialogue about gender, justice, and power that extends beyond the theater and into broader cultural discourse. Audience engagement is one of the most important measures of a film's lasting impact, and Ballerina, 2025, positions itself as a movie designed not just to entertain in the moment but to linger in the minds of viewers. From emotionally charged sequences to highly choreographed action scenes, the film offers a range of experiences that invite audiences to gasp, laugh, or reflect. These are the kinds of moments that audiences remember long after the credits roll and that often drive rewatchability and conversation. One of the most engaging aspects of Ballerina, 2025, is likely its action set pieces. Carefully designed fights can draw gasps from audiences through sheer intensity, clever choreography, or surprising turns of events. These sequences are not just about physical spectacle. They become emotional hooks when they reveal something about the protagonist's resilience, vulnerability, or emotional state. A fight that pushes the character beyond her limits, for instance, will not just thrill viewers but also make them feel invested in her struggle. These moments are often replayed in the minds of audiences, quoted in discussions, and rewatched for their technical brilliance. Emotional engagement, however, does not come from action alone. Scenes that explore the protagonist's inner life are just as vital. Ballerina, 2025, includes quieter moments of reflection, grief, or determination that are likely to make viewers feel deeply connected to her journey. A single close-up where her face reveals both pain and resolve can stir strong emotions, while a moment of loss may bring tears to those invested in her story. These emotional beats work as anchors in the narrative, giving the larger action-driven sequences greater weight and purpose. Another avenue of audience engagement lies in the unexpected. Surprise twists or shocking character decisions can prompt debates and discussions among fans. If Ballerina, 2025, includes a betrayal, a sudden death, or a revelation that reframes earlier events, viewers are likely to dissect those moments long after the film ends. Such surprises often generate theories and speculation, especially if the film leaves certain threads open for interpretation or continuation. These elements feed into fan culture, where moments are shared, analyzed, and debated online and in conversation. Humor, when used sparingly, can also be a powerful engagement tool. Even in a serious revenge narrative, a well-timed line of dialogue or an ironic moment of levity can give audiences a chance to release tension. These moments may not be the core of the film's identity, but they become memorable in part because they stand out against the darker tone. A clever exchange of words or a sarcastic remark might end up being one of the most quoted lines from the film, adding to its cultural footprint. Rewatchability is another key factor in audience engagement. Films that reward close attention tend to build stronger connections with their audiences over time. In Ballerina, 2025, small details in set design, background performances, or visual motifs may only become apparent on a second or third viewing. A repeated symbol, a subtle callback to an earlier line of dialogue, or a carefully staged visual echo can give audiences the thrill of discovery on repeat watches. These elements encourage viewers to return to the film, not just for the main story but for the satisfaction of uncovering its layered construction. The potential for iconic moments is also high. Certain scenes may be visually or emotionally striking enough to take on a life of their own outside the film. A perfectly staged action sequence, a haunting monologue, or a shot that captures the essence of the character's struggle could easily be transformed into GIFs, shared online, and endlessly referenced in fan discussions. These moments expand the film's presence beyond theaters and streaming platforms, embedding it into cultural conversations. Ultimately, audience engagement in Ballerina, 2025, comes from the careful balance of spectacle and substance. The film offers sequences that thrill, moments that move, and twists that spark debate. Its combination of emotional intensity and visual craftsmanship ensures that certain beats will resonate deeply with viewers, while its attention to detail makes it a film that rewards revisiting. By providing both instant impact and long-term discussion points, Ballerina, 2025, positions itself as a movie built not only to be watched but to be experienced, remembered, and talked about. Comparisons to similar films are often the best way to situate a new release like Ballerina, 2025, within the larger cinematic landscape. Because this film exists in the John Wick universe, the most obvious point of comparison is the John Wick series itself, particularly the third and fourth entries where the mythology of the High Table, the sense of global reach, and the focus on specialized assassins became more fully developed. Ballerina inherits this world but chooses to focus more narrowly on one character's personal journey of vengeance, much like the first John Wick did. Where Wick's films are driven by relentless momentum and the stoic presence of Keanu Reeves, Ballerina relies more heavily on the emotional vulnerability and raw determination of Ana de Armas' character, giving it a slightly different tonal balance. When compared directly to John Wick, Ballerina shares many stylistic traits, including stylized action sequences, neon-drenched color palettes, and a fascination with the rituals and codes of the assassin underworld. However, Ballerina differentiates itself by adding layers of femininity and vulnerability to the typically hyper-masculine revenge narrative. While Wick was a retired assassin reluctantly pulled back into his old life, Ballerina presents a younger figure still carving out her place in that world, making her motivations and challenges distinct. This shift allows the film to echo Wick's intensity but with a more personal and exploratory approach to character growth. Outside of the Wick series, Ballerina can also be compared to female-led action films like Atomic Blonde, starring Charlize Theron, or Red Sparrow with Jennifer Lawrence. Atomic Blonde shares the same sense of stylish brutality, with long takes and intricately choreographed fight sequences that highlight physical endurance. Yet Ballerina differs by embedding its action more tightly into an emotional revenge arc, giving weight to each confrontation as part of a larger journey of justice and closure. Red Sparrow, on the other hand, leans into espionage and psychological manipulation, whereas Ballerina keeps its focus on physical confrontation and personal vendetta. Both, however, explore the challenges of being a woman in a violent, male-dominated environment, making them natural touchstones in comparison. The film also draws echoes from classic revenge-driven thrillers such as Kill Bill, particularly in its blending of stylistic fight choreography with an emotionally charged story of a woman wronged and determined to exact justice. Kill Bill used a heightened, almost operatic style with martial arts flourishes and homages to genre cinema, while Ballerina grounds its action more within the sleek, urban aesthetic of the Wick universe. The thematic overlap, revenge as both empowering and destructive, creates a familiar resonance, though Ballerina's execution is more restrained in tone compared to Tarantino's flamboyant approach. Looking more broadly, comparisons can also be drawn to films like The Equalizer or even Leon, the Professional. Both of these feature solitary figures engaging in methodical, stylized violence while grappling with their inner moral compass. Leon also introduced a younger, vulnerable character navigating a world of violence, which can be seen as a distant influence on how Ballerina frames its protagonist's emotional journey. The Equalizer emphasizes precision and tactical dominance, something mirrored in Ballerina's carefully constructed fight sequences, though again with a more personal rather than altruistic motivation. Where Ballerina might struggle in comparison is in scale. John Wick Chapter 4 set an extremely high bar for modern action films with its ambitious choreography, globe-trotting locations, and epic length. Ballerina, by narrowing its scope to a more personal story, risks feeling smaller in ambition, though this focus may also be its strength if it resonates emotionally with viewers. The film's success will likely be judged on whether its more contained approach delivers depth and intimacy that other large-scale action films sometimes overlook. Ultimately, Ballerina, 2025, borrows intelligently from its predecessors while aiming to carve out its own identity. It acknowledges the stylistic and tonal foundation laid by John Wick while attempting to highlight a different perspective within that universe. Its closest comparisons, Atomic Blonde, Red Sparrow, Kill Bill, and Wick itself, show that while it may not reinvent the genre completely, it offers a fresh angle by anchoring stylized violence in a deeply personal, female-driven revenge narrative. The film's place in the broader conversation will depend on how well it balances homage with originality, and whether audiences see it as a worthy companion to its celebrated predecessors or a smaller echo of larger achievements. Symbolism and metaphors in Ballerina, 2025, are not simply decorative touches but integral to how the film communicates deeper meanings beneath its surface-level narrative of revenge and survival. Like the John Wick series that inspired it, Ballerina layers its sleek action sequences and underworld mythology with subtle cues that echo the emotional states of its characters and the broader themes of identity, grief, and transformation. The film uses recurring motifs, color palettes, props, and visual metaphors to add texture, turning straightforward moments into symbolic expressions of the protagonist's journey. One of the most obvious metaphors is contained in the title itself. A ballerina is traditionally associated with grace, control, and discipline, but also with fragility and vulnerability. Ana de Armas's character embodies both sides of this symbol. Her assassin training mirrors the rigid discipline of ballet, where every movement requires precision and endurance, while her vulnerability stems from the personal wounds driving her pursuit of vengeance. The metaphor plays out visually in how the film frames her movements, fluid yet forceful, elegant yet violent. A scene in which she balances momentarily in a fighting stance echoes the poise of a dancer, turning combat into a performance where violence and beauty coexist. Mirrors are another recurring symbol. Early in the film, the protagonist is shown gazing into a mirror, fractured by cracks, reflecting her broken sense of self and unresolved trauma. Later, mirrors are used in fight sequences to both disorient the viewer and to metaphorically represent the duality of her life, the disciplined assassin versus the grieving daughter. By the climax, when she confronts her enemy, a mirror shatters during the fight, symbolizing both the destruction of illusions and the breaking of the psychological barriers holding her back. Color symbolism also plays a major role. Much like the John Wick film's reliance on neon palettes, Ballerina uses color to convey shifting emotional states. Blue lighting is often employed in moments of sorrow or isolation, bathing the protagonist in cold hues that reflect her grief and loneliness. Red dominates action sequences, not only signaling danger and blood but also symbolizing her rage and unstoppable drive for vengeance. Interestingly, moments of quiet reflection are often washed in softer, neutral tones, suggesting the thin possibility of peace if revenge can bring closure. The deliberate transitions between these colors underscore the emotional rhythm of the story, making the palette itself a metaphor for her shifting identity. Recurring objects also carry symbolic weight. A necklace given by her family before their murder becomes a talisman of memory and loss. She touches it during moments of vulnerability, reminding viewers that beneath the hardened assassin is a grieving daughter whose humanity has not been erased. This necklace acts as a narrative anchor. It grounds her motivations, appears at pivotal points, and is nearly lost in one battle before she recovers it, metaphorically reaffirming her commitment to honor her family's memory. The motif of dance resurfaces not only in how she fights but also in how the camera frames her journey. Several sequences mimic the rhythm of a performance, with long takes resembling a stage spotlight on her, while others use abrupt cuts to mimic the sharp, punctuated beats of choreography. Violence itself becomes a metaphorical dance, blurring the line between destruction and artistry. This metaphor emphasizes the central theme that identity is often a performance shaped by discipline, repetition, and the gaze of others. Another layer of symbolism comes from locations. Cramped, shadowy interiors symbolize the suffocating weight of her grief and the dangerous closeness of the world she inhabits. By contrast, wide-open spaces in later scenes symbolize both freedom and vulnerability. A snowy landscape fight sequence, for example, uses the whiteness of the snow as a metaphor for purity and rebirth, yet the blood spilled across it becomes a stark reminder that vengeance stains even the most serene surfaces. This juxtaposition mirrors her inner conflict, seeking redemption but wading deeper into violence. The antagonists themselves can also be read metaphorically. Rather than being just physical enemies, they represent oppressive systems, corruption, and the faceless cruelty of the assassin underworld. Each confrontation is not only a literal fight but a symbolic confrontation with forces that deny her identity and autonomy. By defeating them, she symbolically dismantles the structures that have tried to define or control her, reclaiming her agency in the process. Even silence functions as metaphor in Ballerina. Scenes with little to no dialogue highlight her isolation and the weight of unspoken grief. The contrast between these silences and the loud, explosive fights creates a metaphor for the inner war between reflection and rage. Silence becomes a space where memory and pain live, while violence becomes her only language of expression. By weaving together these symbols and metaphors, Ballerina, 2025, transcends being just an action film. It becomes a layered exploration of grief, identity, and transformation. The ballerina motif, mirrors, colors, recurring objects, and visual choices all reinforce the emotional stakes, ensuring that even casual viewers can feel the depth beneath the spectacle. For those watching closely, these metaphors add richness and invite deeper interpretation, making the film not just a thrill ride but a symbolic dance of vengeance and rebirth. Ballerina, 2025, firmly positions itself within the larger John Wick franchise, which makes its placement, continuity, and contribution to the established mythology crucial in understanding its purpose and effectiveness. Unlike a standalone revenge thriller, this film carries the weight of being part of a well-loved and meticulously crafted cinematic universe. As such, it faces dual responsibilities: to deliver its own satisfying narrative and to enhance, expand, or at least complement the broader storyline set in motion by the John Wick films. In terms of timeline, Ballerina is set between John Wick, Chapter 3, Parabellum and John Wick, Chapter 4. This placement is intentional and significant, as it allows the film to explore events happening concurrently with John Wick's own battles against the High Table. By situating itself here, the movie has space to tell a self-contained revenge narrative while still feeding into the larger conflict that dominates the Wick series. For longtime fans, this timeline choice is not only a way of grounding the new character but also a chance to see familiar faces appear without disrupting the established chronology. Continuity is a key part of Ballerina's design. From its production style to its world-building elements, the film includes recognizable markers of the franchise: the rules of the High Table, the stylized Continental hotels, the ornate rituals surrounding assassins, and the brutal consequences for breaking codes of honor. These callbacks reassure fans that while the focus has shifted from John Wick himself, the DNA of the series remains intact. Appearances by Keanu Reeves as John Wick, Ian McShane as Winston, and Angelica Houston as the director strengthen these ties, providing both narrative continuity and emotional reassurance. They remind audiences that this is not just a spin-off but a piece of the same puzzle. Easter eggs are scattered throughout the film for devoted fans. The director, first introduced in John Wick, Chapter 3, reappears as a major influence on the protagonist, tying her personal journey to Wick's own backstory of ballet training and assassin indoctrination. Small details, such as familiar coins, markers, or references to past events in the Wick films, serve as connective tissue. These details may seem minor, but they are essential to how the franchise builds its lore, rewarding viewers who pay attention while remaining accessible to newcomers. The film also advances the larger story thematically, if not directly. While John Wick's films often highlight the crushing inevitability of violence and the inescapable reach of the High Table, Ballerina adds a more intimate angle: the cost of revenge on personal identity. By showing another assassin shaped by the same world but motivated by a deeply personal tragedy, the film broadens the perspective of the franchise. It reminds audiences that Wick is not alone. The High Table's actions ripple outward, creating countless stories of grief, vengeance, and rebellion. This contributes to the mythology by emphasizing the systemic oppression of the assassin world, rather than keeping it solely centered on Wick. There is also a clear sense of franchise building at play. Ballerina may function as a bridge between main installments, but it also lays the groundwork for potential sequels or interconnected spin-offs. Its focus on a younger character opens possibilities for long-term development, especially if audiences connect with her emotional journey. Much like other cinematic universes, this film tests whether the franchise can survive and thrive beyond its original central figure. If successful, it could signal a new chapter for the John Wick universe, one where multiple characters' stories intertwine across films, much like comic book series operate. The continuity, however, is not without its challenges. Some critics may argue that Ballerina risks feeling too dependent on its parent franchise, leaning heavily on cameos and familiar lore instead of carving out a bold new identity. This is always the balancing act with spin-offs: to honor the past without becoming overshadowed by it. If you enjoyed this video and would like us to provide reviews of every kind of movie, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.
Goodbye.